Acton In Focus is brought to you by Gallant Insurance Agency.
Welcome to Acton In Focus. I'm Vivian Kobusingye Birchall, your host, and this is our first episode in the studio. And with me is a special guest, Himaja Ngireddy, who is the first Indian American elected on our Acton Select Board. Welcome, Himaja.
Thank you so much, Vivian. It's so great to be here.
I'm happy to have you here today.
Thank you.
Share your experience as a person of color and as a first Indian American elected on the Select Board. What does that feel like?
It feels surreal. Part of it is it feels like a real honor. The fact that I get to represent my community in this space, my community which is so often not represented in spaces of town government and town leadership, and so that's been a really cool experience. It's been so heartwarming to see, young people of all ages, just being involved in town government. Even during the campaign, they helped us phone bank, write postcards, they did so much, and so it was so cool for them to kind of take ownership of this win as well. But also, it's definitely it's a feeling of, it's 2021, and this is the first that we've had. I'm the first Indian American to serve on the Select Board, and part of that brings kind of a sad realization that we still have such ways to go before it becomes normalized. And so that's something that I try to remind myself of. It's a win, but also at the same time, it's a call for action.
That is right. Hold it right there. We'll come back to that later, but yeah. I want to take us back to your journey.
Yeah.
How did you decide to run for office?
Yeah. So what started this whole thing?
Right.
For me, the reason why I decided to run for the Select Board was really based on the events that happened last year with the whole racial justice movement really taking surge in the country. And it was really, really interesting because previous to this, I had done a lot of community work, but I had done it at the national level. I had done it at the international level. I was a huge, I was very passionate about gender equity advocacy at the UN, for example. Right. I did a lot of work at USAID, where I helped with food security, which was one of my personal research and advocacy interests. And so, that was what I had known up till 2020. I had always envisioned myself creating change at that macro level. Mm-hmm. And 2020 came, and we got a pandemic, and we got a lot of things going on. Mm-hmm. And, to just see the racial justice movement really kick into gear with people of all ages, of all backgrounds, right, realizing that this is a significant issue, and some people not realizing it's a significant issue by virtue of that, that really called my attention. And specifically, I'd like to call out the Racial Justice for Black Lives group, just because they had done such an incredible job pulling together the community, and that really taught me what local action can do. That was really that instance which really showed to me that, people in the local community creating local change is a part of creating change at a greater level. It's about setting the standard in which we can all follow, and we should all follow. And that's really what kind of got me interested in learning more about town government. And then from there, I was like, okay, let's dive into this and see what I can contribute. And I remember looking at the website because I was really interested in running, and I had just voted for Fran in the annual town election, and I was thinking about whether to run in the special election or not. It was, it was coming up to the deadline. I was really trying to decide. And I remember emailing Eva, the town clerk, and I was like, just to clarify, is there an age limit? Because I'm not seeing anything on the website. Is there something I'm missing here? And she responded, there's no age limit, there's no experience threshold. You can you can do that. Like, if you want to run, you can run.
Right.
And that's when it hit me that, oh, well, maybe I can run. So perhaps semi-naively, I was like, let's do this. Even though I, had never been a part of a campaign, even at a local level. And I have to say it was quite the learning experience. I feel like the next 2-3 months was really like go, 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 because it was a special election, but
right.
Honestly, I wouldn't have changed that experience for anything.
Yeah, I wouldn't call yourself semi-naive because let me tell you, what you did was brave. It wasn't anything naive about it, and it was courageous. And there are so many young people of color who you inspired because it is a brave move. I worked for the town government. There was no color,
Yes.
It's something that we need to work on.
Yes.
And so seeing somebody step up courageously, you inspired a lot. Not only the young people, you inspired even us, the older generation. And the other thing that you've mentioned a lot is, you mentioned earlier was the call to action. Mm-hmm. So what does action mean to you? What are and you've also mentioned racial justice for Black lives and the role they played in mobilizing the community behind candidates, behind causes, behind just creating awareness of the gaps in the relations between races. And it was, like you mentioned, rightly put, it was very interesting to see people of all races identifying and rallying behind that. But then my question to you is, beyond the Black Lives Matter signs and beyond standing at Keller's corner, what can we do?
It's one of the most important things that we need to focus on, right? When we talk about diversity, it's not just a buzzword. When we talk about inclusion, it doesn't mean, it's a very powerful word in and of itself, right? Mm-hmm. When we talk about diversity and inclusion, we're talking about making sure that the lived experiences of all the people in this town are being represented, so that when we're making decisions, we're really making decisions that benefit the most amount of people. And historically, we've had, we haven't had that. We haven't had the representation we need. And I'm not just talking select board, I'm talking about throughout all our town committees and, town bodies. We just haven't had, and we haven't embraced the diversity in our community as we should have. And this means, and when I talk about diversity, I'm talking about gender diversity, I'm talking about race diversity, I'm talking about age diversity. These are all so important in making sure that we're really creating the change that we need to for everybody, and we're taking everyone's feedback into consideration. So when you say call to action, I 100% agree. I think that was one of the reasons why I decided to run too, was because I was thinking to myself, how can I contribute to this movement? Where can I do the most amount of good within my capacity? And it was really, it was being inspired by the movements. It was being inspired by, the people, my friends, standing at Kelly's corner, right. That really kind of gave me the push that I needed to be like, I need to do something more. And I think, I think that, when we characterize these movements, oftentimes in our mind, when we think about, for example, the racial justice movement, we think about people walking in a line holding signs, right? And we're thinking about a mass of people. But that's truly just a snapshot of the change that we're trying to create. It's creating this movement, right? It's getting people on the streets that gets the nation's attention. And then, you have people's attention, and people are starting to think to themselves, what can we tangibly do to help support Black lives?
Right.
And that's when you have people pursuing actions. And it was really cool because, community organizations, for example, like Racial Justice for Black Lives, support the entire process. Right. They support the advocacy and the outreach. They support the actions taken by people. And I think that that's the power of community groups, and that's the power of community action, is because you can tangibly be part of every single one of those steps and create the change that you want to see. You know, for me as a gender equity advocate, I have lobbied on Capitol Hill. I have been to the UN like 4 times, and you know, it's powerful. It's important work. But it always felt like I was talking to a stone wall.
Right.
I wasn't sure what that effect was going to be. I wasn't going to be part of the decision-making process. For a lot of it, it seemed like my hands were tied.
Right.
And I think one of the most powerful realizations to come out of this whole experience is that, like we, you know, working at the local level, you can take part in every single one of those steps. You can be a part of that advocacy. You can be inspired by that advocacy. You can want to take action, and you can see the effects of that action. And then based on that, you can improve that. You can improve those actions to really make sure that you're doing the best amount of service. And so that's what's really excited me about serving Acton at this in this capacity.
It's interesting, you know, some of the work that you have highlighted and the advocacy initiatives that you've been a part of. I gave a keynote at one of the events at the UN as well, but this one was focused on immigration. And you know, what you're saying is just reminding me that sometimes we might follow our passions and, you know, advocate for inclusivity in certain areas, and then we take them at a level that is not giving back to the community. So what I'm hearing is that you came from that space and decided to come down to your local community and try to advocate for those issues locally. And I think we have many people in our community who are doing amazing work across the world, across the country, sorry. But then, you know, as a member of the Select Board, how can we mobilize all these enthusiasts about social justice to come and really create the change that we need in our town of Acton and in our Commonwealth of Massachusetts?
Absolutely. I think that in this town, we're really blessed, and we're so blessed to have people that are so passionate about being involved in town government and wanting to participate. I came into it thinking it was going to be, I don't know if anyone's seen Parks and Rec, but I was like, I have. Yes, I was like, I'm going to have to be the Leslie Knope of Acton, because I don't know how involved people are. Like, we need to get people involved. There are quite a lot of people involved in this town. I was like, whoa. But it also struck me that there were certain voices I was hearing very often, and there were certain voices that I was not hearing at all.
Yeah.
And my family was part of the group of voices that were never heard at all in town government. And so I can definitely relate to that side of things. And so for me, you know, if there's anything I would say for how we can mobilize people, I would say the most important thing is continue outreach. Continue telling people about town government. To continue telling people, this is what town government is. This is why it's impactful. This is how it can change your life. This is how it changes the lives of people. And these are the gaps that we see, and these are the opportunities. And getting people involved in that process, people who may not know about town government and maybe have been too intimidated to jump into town government because they feel like they don't know as much as the other person next to them who's served for, you know, many, many years. I think that's the most important thing. We just have to break down those barriers, and we have to keep breaking down this rhetoric of, you know, you have to be a certain way in order to serve on town government, because there is no rule book. There is, you know, other than, you know, being a resident of Acton and being passionate about serving your community, that's all you need to have. And so that's something we need to continue pushing, and something that I personally need to do as well to really make sure that.
I love what you said. There are no rules.
There are no rules.
And, you know, I need to remind myself that, you know, I've always had a passion for policy and government. So since I was a child, but you know, like you rightly say, there is that intimidation of will I fit the standard that, you know, the artificial standards that have been put in place by society. It is inspiring, but now that you're on the board, what has been most exciting? What has been a shock? And what is, what's your experience?
What's my experience? Yes, it's been a great experience. And I say that because I was really nervous walking into it. I'm like, everyone knows I'm the young kid who like doesn't have much experience in this type of setting. I don't know how they're gonna take it. But they have treated me with grace and kindness and have been really opening and really just welcoming and helping me learn the procedure and learn, how things go. I think that, it can be really daunting as, any board member. And then, for someone like me who, like, my family never participated much in town government, for me, it was definitely a leap. But yeah, I have to say, everyone's been really supportive. All the town staff, the town manager, all my fellow select board members, they've been really kind, and I've been really I've loved that. I can't be grateful enough for that. I would say the thing that's shocked me the most. I have to think about that for a second. I think the thing that's shocked me the most is how much I can learn from others. The people who serve, currently on the select board have such diverse experiences, both having perhaps served previously on the select board or, have been involved in different town committees or, have just, the professional and academic experience to speak on certain issues. And it's been really cool to see people be like, oh yeah, like I know a little bit more about this because of X, Y, and Z. I think that's been the thing that's been really cool to see and really cool to learn from. I always come from things from a student perspective because I'm a student. And so I always take things as a learning opportunity. I'm like, this is the best thing ever. Like,
all right, speaking of learning, have you gotten a crash course in open meeting law?
Oh my God, I have. It was so funny. Like I talked with one of the select board members, and then I talked with the town manager, and then another select board member. All of them were like, "Do you know about open meeting law?"
You better have that memorized.
I better have it
to
memorized.
Stay out of trouble. Because
oh my gosh, yes.
Open meeting law has been, I think, in existence for I don't know how long, but it's one of the interesting things to learn about town government, and that's sadly many of people in the community do not understand what that is, and
I didn't understand it previous to this for sure.
Yeah, so maybe that's one thing that we could work together, maybe to sensitize the community through. I mean, when I say work together, I mean ActonTV and members of the select board to just inform people about what town government is and what these fancy terms are, because I tried to create a video before about just welcome to Acton with the very few things about Acton, but then if we want people to engage in town government, this is my call to action, or call for action, sorry, to you as members of the board the select board, to really prioritize sensitizing our community about what this town government means, the terminologies that people need to understand, and the processes.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, because oftentimes the complexity of town government, the jargon that's used, for example, is used to be exclusionary. I was like, what's the word? It's used to be exclusionary. It's used to make people feel like if I don't have years and years of experience, my voice doesn't matter in these spaces. It's a tactic, and it works. It works because it makes you feel insignificant. And for the longest time, that's exactly how I felt too. I'm like, I don't understand all this, like all these words. For those who may not know, open meeting law is basically a guideline that states that, if you are an elected official, you can't talk with other elected officials outside of an official meeting, especially if you talk with, in this case, 2 or more select board members. You reach a quorum when it comes to discussing especially things on the agenda. And if you do that, then you're you're no longer addressing the things on the agenda in a public meeting for people to see. And so that's a violation, because us as public officials, the discussions that we have as a board should be available for the public to see so that we can be held accountable.
Right.
And so that's essentially what open meeting law is. But yeah, exactly. I think that it's just used to make people feel like, you know, they shouldn't be in those spaces. And that's one thing that really needs to be worked on. You know, we have to continue working to make sure that people feel comfortable talking to a town government employee. They feel comfortable sharing their thoughts. They feel comfortable running and being in those positions because they know that maybe I don't know the exact procedure of how things work, but it's going to be fine. And just kind of as a funny anecdote, my first day as a select board member, I was really glad this was during an executive session, because I was like, I'm really glad the world did not see this, but I'm saying it now, so I guess the world will see it. They were doing, they were going through their first vote, and they called on me first, and so I was like, I'm present. and then everyone on the board had like a jerk reaction. I don't think they had ever heard someone say "I" wrong ever in a roll call. And David Martin, one of the select board members, David Martin, was like, "You have to say I." What a rookie mistake! But if anything, that comes to show that you can quickly learn. I never used present ever again. It's been I ever since.
Oh, Himaja. That is so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a learning curve.
It's a learning curve.
Especially, again, since we are, as people of color, we're getting more empowered to be in these spaces. And we are going to learn, we're going to make mistakes, but that shouldn't hold us back.
Exactly.
We're still going to get up and do the work and get more people involved.
Yes, just laugh it off, shrug it off, like. And it's all about, you know, and it's frustrating because the society we live in tells us as women of color not to be confident or not to embrace our mistakes or, you know, not to accept any mistakes from ourselves, but to constantly accept the mistakes of others. And I think it's time we change that rhetoric and just, you know, when we make mistakes, just be like, we made it. It's fine. Shrug it off, move on. Come on, people. Have you never made a mistake before?
Focus on the work.
So, you know, sometimes you gotta laugh at yourself. And it just, you know, and it just makes things seem that much more, you know.
Human.
Yeah, human. And it feels like, you know, you can do it. And so that's something I've been trying to tell people is like, you know, just own it and like, you know, just know that you belong in this space. And I think, you know, the both of us, if there's any call to action from us, it's to constantly remind people that you belong and you should be here. And I mean, the statistics are so sad. It takes, I think the one statistic that really got me into politics, this was like the statistic that changed my life kind of thing. And I don't even remember the source, which is terrible. But I'll try to make the story short. When I was at UConn, I was president of the TEDx UConn chapter. And so it was really cool being able to like facilitate all these TED Talks. And one of our TED Talks from 2017 was this young scholar who was studying women's participation in politics. This was around the time that, you know, we were in the aftermath of the 2016 election. A lot of us were feeling the raw hurt because Clinton had lost. Yeah. And she gave a TED Talk about how we need more women participation in politics. And if anything, this loss should show us that we still have ways to go with encouraging women in politics. And the one statistic she used that just stuck with me was, you know, men on average need to be told by 1 to 2 people that they should run for any type of elected official position, and they'll feel like they're qualified enough to run for that position. On average, a woman needs to be told by 7 people to feel like she's capable enough to run for an elected position. And, you know, it's the sad truth that, you know, that we have all these barriers that prevent, you know, our women, our incredible women in our community from feeling like they deserve to be in these spaces. And so if there's any call to action, I would say is continue to tell the women in your life, you know, who might be interested that, you know, they should just go for it. Like, they are capable, they are enough, and they should go for it. Politics is not for everyone, 100%. So whether you support a candidate or whether you know, engage in town government in another way, participating in public forums, attending town meetings, in whatever way possible, continuing to stay engaged is so, so important because we need your voices. So.
And it's fun if you make it a hobby.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so that way it doesn't feel like work. It just feels like life, you know. And I think it's important for us to start looking at engagement in politics and policy and government, as a way of life, not necessarily as, you know, I can't find the word to use it, but make it joyful, a joyful experience. I think what I'm hearing from you, and as a host now, I'm crossing a boundary, but I should be asking a question, not analyzing.
No, this is a conversation.
But what I'm hearing is that we need to really get together and as people of color and forget some of the, not quite forget, but be cognizant of the constraints that we face every single day and try to find ways to work around them, and, you know, and of course call on everyone in the community to support women of color who step up and run for office like Himaja, and to support her work on the select board, because like you've mentioned, there's a lot of learning to
there's
have.
A lot
and so
of
there's going to be mistakes, but not to judge Himaja harshly for any mistakes that might happen.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And also, you know, it's so important because one of the things I ran on was the importance of bringing underrepresented voices to the table. And I'm only one of those underrepresented voices here in Acton. And so for me, it's so crucial that, you know, I hear from people because that's how I inform my own work. And so, you know, if there's, you know, another call to action I would pitch for the community, it's please feel free to reach out to your elected representatives, you know, in whatever way. I'm available on social media, my Acton government email, whatever way, because it's just so important for us to get the perspectives that we need in order to do in order to do our work.
Right.
Because oftentimes, you know, the best thing that we can do is really take our personal opinions out of the equation and really just focus on, you know, what is the feedback I've gotten from the town? Has there been an overwhelming call for a certain decision? And if so, that's the right decision, because ultimately we're making decisions for this town. So it's really, really helpful for us to get that feedback.
Well, Himaja, we could go on and on, but I definitely will be bringing you back to tell us more about, you know, what's happening at the town, at the select board level or in the town, some of the projects going on. We can't talk about that now because of, you know, want to keep this a little shorter. But, but it's been amazing having Himaja here to share her experience running for office and also serving on the select board. We're proud that you stood up and lead the torch for other younger youth of color who might be thinking of office, and also for people of color. So thank you for your service.
Thank you. And honestly, Vivian, you're such an inspiration too. And honestly, just so excited that, you know, we got to meet on the campaign trail over the past few months. And it's been so great to just have a friend that I could lean on when I needed it. So thank you.
And to our viewers, thanks for watching Acton in Focus. Till next time. Thank you, Himaja.
Thank you.